Senator Josh Hawley from my home state of Missouri, who has been doing a fantastic job representing Show Me State. And he joins us on the phone. Senator, always a pleasure. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. So first up, I have to start out with, I'm sure you are aware of the grown people, the Antifa folks who set up a fort in the middle of Seattle, 6 blocks. You know how your children would set up a fort in the living room? They've done that in the middle of Seattle. They've taken it over. And I just saw a tweet from Governor Jay Inslee, who until last night had no idea this had been going on. And he decided to try to smartly but unsuccessfully pivot and attack the president for threat of using Military and Insurrection Act for quelling violent riots, and said that Washingtonians really have nothing to worry about. Basically, it's kind of fine what's happening. They'll handle it. I don't trust him, and I want to get your thoughts on maybe perhaps what should be the response when you have people who have taken over 6 blocks of a city.
I think, this just shows you where lawlessness gets you, and it shows you where defund the police would lead, by the way. I mean, this has got to be one of the worst ideas in the history of America, to defund our police. And I say that as the former chief law enforcer of the state of Missouri, as the attorney general. I worked with the police every single day for my 2 years in office. Local police, our highway patrol, who are our state police in the state of Missouri. And these attacks on them are just ridiculous. You want to know what happens if you defund the police and if you declare open season on cops? This is what happens. You've got violent looters and crazies who take over your city, set up fences, and now they're charging people, Dana, to come into the area. Like if you want to pass, it's like a gang. If you want to pass through this part of Seattle, you got to pay this group, to go through their autonomous zone. I think it is insanity, and this has to stop. I mean, we have got to have the fair and equal rule of law is the bedrock of any free society, and we've got to reestablish it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point as well. And I love how they say, we don't need the police. It'll be better without the police. And then they immediately got a warlord who is a SoundCloud artist, and a guy he became the warlord simply because he had the most guns, literally. So he became the warlord, and apparently another warlord is going to challenge him. It is insane. I thought it was going to be so much better. I thought it was, I realize utopia is Latin for nothing, but still I thought that there would at least be more. I don't know. Actually, I didn't. It's just hysterical. It's hysterical were it not so sad. And I just wish that there was a live stream with a laugh track. Now, to that point, all of the discussion about the president, you talked about, because in your capacity before you were senator, working with law enforcement and upholding law and order. Do you think that we are at the point? I realize that the violence and the riots that have been going on for 2 weeks, I feel like that has calmed down. But at what point do we seriously as a country say, well, if the police can't handle it and the National Guard can't handle it, we're limited government conservatives, what do we do? At what point, in your legal opinion, do we actually have that conversation and really seriously consider it?
Well, we have statutes to that effect for this reason, Dana. This is why Congress this isn't new ground, and we've confronted this before. Congress has passed the Insurrection Act and other statutes that allow, in the cases of particular emergencies, that allow for the president to restore order. And listen, so there's a lawful process for that. Nobody wants to see that happen, and it would be a total indictment of local leadership if it came to that. But and this is why it is vital that these local and state leaders do the job and actually get things under control. Because if they don't, then there's not going to be any choice. Because at the end of the day, we cannot allow our streets and our neighborhoods to be turned into war zones. Because something you just alluded to, Dana, in a war zone, it's the person who's got the most firepower, literally, who's in charge. Is that what we want in America? Is that what we want our streets to be? It's who's ever got the most guns, whoever can threaten the most. And this is why, can I just say this defund the police thing? I see all of these wealthy liberals pushing this from the comfort of their television studios. They're not worried about it because they don't live in any neighborhoods where there's a serious crime problem. They can afford private security. Many of these really rich, especially celebrities who are out there pushing this, they don't have to go home to neighborhoods that can be dangerous, where you need the protection of the police. So if you get rid of the police and you have an open season on law enforcement, who will it hurt? It will hurt working Americans. It will hurt the most vulnerable in our communities. It will destroy our working class neighborhoods We cannot have that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. The people with the most guns would take over, which in my area would be me. So I hope that everyone is comfortable with that. I mean, that's just the reality we're looking at. So to this point, and there are two other issues I want to ask you about, but related to this, Antifa being designated a terrorist organization, a lot of people have been asking about the relationship between Antifa and the official group Black Lives Matter, because I think there are peaceful protesters out there that are separate from the official entity, which is structured, as I understand it, as a corporation. And a lot of individuals, when looking at the donations for this group, it goes to ACTBLUE. And ACTBLUE is how they've been soliciting these donations. You go through, you can publicly see where their money goes to, and it's pretty much exclusively Democrat campaigns. And I know that in looking at Antifa and looking at who all could be connected and the funding sources, is this something that you think lawmakers should look into? Because it listed, I mean, it's Bernie, Biden, Warren, Pete for America, the DCCC, Andrew Yang, all kinds of Democrat entities that are the exclusive recipients of all of these funds. To me, that kind of, I mean, would that fit into, if you're investigating Antifa, would this be one of the things that you think would be relevant to the scope of that investigation?
Yes, and it is really weird, Dana. I've seen these same news reports, and I would just say that this might be a law enforcement matter. I mean, you've got to, when people give you money, when you are a registered 501c3 or a 501c4 or what have you, or maybe you're a for-profit corporation, you're soliciting money. But when you do that, you've got to tell people what you're spending the money on, especially if you're a political organization or a 501c3 or any of the 501s. Like you can't just say, well, give me the money for this, and I'm going to go spend it on that. So I don't know what the facts are here in terms of what these organizations, how they're holding out to people, what they're spending the money on. But if you're taking the money, representing it's going to be used for one thing, and then you're turning around and giving it to political campaigns, the best you can say about that is that's really strange, and that raises a lot of questions. So, there may well need to be some law enforcement action here just to make sure that this money isn't getting funneled and siphoned off and used in irregular ways. But I think a point you made just a second ago, you've got people out there who are demonstrating peacefully, trying to keep their distance from these crazy rioters and looters and all of that stuff. And, they want to go out there and in American tradition, make their point, be peaceful about it. That's fine. You know what? That's great. That's a constitutional right that they have. Now, by the way, can I just say that people who want to go to church on Sundays also ought to have that same right. And I don't understand why protesters can protest peacefully, but worshipers can't gather peacefully. So I've got that problem. But all of those people, worshipers, protesters, they're a lot different than these violent rioters and extremists who are out there causing violence. So I would say let's treat, the protesters and the folks who want to go to church on Sunday, let's treat them equally. Let's let folks who want to get out there and worship, let's let them do that. And let's put the violent criminals behind bars where they belong.
No, exactly. And I know that you're one of those in D.C. that's leading the charge on that. And you've spoken to William Barr to that effort as to the preferential treatment that individuals it seems like protesters and rioters are receiving over people like me. I mean, my church is still closed. We've had to live stream our service and eat Ritz crackers and grape juice, just us together gathered by our sink, and that's fine. I'm not complaining, but I'm just, I'm saying it seems like there's a little bit of a preference before the law there, which would be unlawful. I'm going to get to asking you about your move regarding Taiwan and China. But before I do, really quickly, I thought you have been one of the most well-spoken on the whole situation with Section 230 and social media. And I know that after everything with riots and that calmed down, we're going to have a return to this discussion nationally. And I've been kind of on the fence. I always want to err on the side of liberty. But at the same time, I know that we're on new ground and that, we're looking at an entity that, I mean, if algorithms can be speech and you can edit algorithms, then maybe there's an argument there. But let me ask this. Do you think that tech, and this is something that Congressman Matt Gaetz had suggested on Fox a couple of weeks ago, do you think that big tech should be regulated as like a public utility?
Well, I don't know that a public utility is usually something that is basically in many ways almost an arm of the government. And I don't want to see a government takeover of these entities, of these platforms. I just want some basic fairness. I want them to abide by the terms of their contracts, Dana. Here's what I mean by that. Facebook and Twitter, they say we don't discriminate on the basis of political viewpoint. We have neutral contract terms. So I would just say, okay, that's fine. So let's just give people the right, if Twitter and Facebook actually do discriminate and they violate the terms of their contract, let's give people the right to sue them. It's just that simple. I mean, let's just hold them to their own terms. It's a free market. If they want to say, okay, we're going to be a liberal platform now, then that's fine. People will go somewhere else and there'll be competition. But that's not what they're doing right now. They're monopolies, and they're saying, oh, we're neutral and we shouldn't be challenged for anything we do. I think that's crazy. Let's give people the right, if they are discriminated against, differentiated because of their speech, let's give people the right to challenge that. I think that's a simple, common sense solution that is totally fair, and it also both preserves freedom of speech for everybody involved, and it's good for competition.
What do you say to those folks out there? And I'm one of them. I have concerns about this because I remember back, in college during the early Wild West days of comment sections where all these website proprietors were terrified that they could be held liable for something that a commenter said. What do you say to those who are worried that that could once again become the standard, that this would even be applicable to like Yelp reviews and people would be liable for what's posted in comment sections? I mean, is there a way to differentiate that or prevent something, the effects of a decision like this from being that far reaching?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And it is vital to make that distinction, Dana. I think we shouldn't touch any liability that has to do with what other people say. The only problem is when Twitter, for instance, take what they did to President Trump, when Twitter tries to comment on, editorialize about what the president is doing, and then they hide behind their immunity and they say, oh, no, we're not editorializing. We're just moderating, quote unquote, moderating his content, but we're not actually speaking. That's just BS, and everybody knows it. So, if they leave the tweets alone or whatever, then they don't have any liability, and they shouldn't. So I don't think that Yelp ought to be liable for comments third parties make. I don't think Twitter ought to be liable for stuff that people say on Twitter. The problem is when Twitter decides it will speak itself, and it does so in a biased manner.
Right.
And I think the solution to that is give people the right to call them out. You don't need a bunch of heavy-handed regulation. You need to take them over. Give people the right to go call them out and to get their day in court and enforce the terms of the contract. That's what I would do. Does
it worry you that sometimes it seems that Joe Biden might be on the same page with certain aspects of this as some Republicans? I just was reading this piece in the New York Times. He's going after Facebook's speech policies again and looking to strengthen rules against misinformation and harmful comments. And I know that they want to go after Facebook because Republicans have been supremely successful with Facebook advertising. I mean, boil it all down, that's what this fight's about. Does it concern you ever that they're seemingly I feel like they're kind of sitting back and allowing Republicans to sort of beat a path open for them, and then they can go and try to enforce this against advertising with Facebook. How do you address that?
Well, I think that what you see with the liberals is what they want to do is they want more censorship. They don't. My objection is to the censorship that Twitter and Facebook is doing. I think they're doing too much in terms of they're discriminating against conservatives. The left wants them to discriminate against conservatives. This is a great deal for the left right now because these platforms are monopolies. They have control of the channels of communication, you might say, and they're liberals. And so if they put their thumb on the scale, Dana, we don't have any recourse. People say all the time, "We'll just get off Facebook and go somewhere else." Well, like where? I mean, what's the recourse? They're a monopoly company. Like, what are the legitimate competitors, places you could go? This is what the president's been saying about Twitter. Okay,
could that be like an antitrust? Could that be an antitrust approach?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's and by the way, that's why there is an antitrust investigation of Google that is currently underway at the Justice Department, and Google owns YouTube, Instagram, and that's exactly the right way to go. But I just think, I'm sorry, YouTube, they own YouTube. They do not own Instagram. Facebook owns Instagram.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, though. Actually, like you think all these different companies, all these different platforms, they're all owned by like two, I mean, Instagram, WhatsApp owned by Facebook, YouTube owned by Google.
Right.
But to your point, Dana, bottom line, the left wants control over speech by these corporations, and then they want them to censor for their liberal views, to impose their liberal views. All I would say is that conservatives want is we want more competition, number one. Number two, we want more free speech.
Right.
That's what we want. So I would say I don't want to see more censorship, for heaven's sake. I want to see less. Let people say what they want. If they're advocating violence, of course you can take that down. No problem.
Yeah, there's legal
But if it's
legal statutes for that.
totally. Totally.
One quick thing, I know we're just about out of time, but I wanted to make sure that I mentioned you've introduced the Taiwan Defense Act, which is ensuring that the United States is going to continue to meet obligations under the Taiwan Relations Act, because the Communist Party of China has been very, very aggressive. This is an area of the world to watch for sure, and they've been increasingly aggressive towards Taiwan. We have about 60 seconds left. I just wanted to give you just 60 seconds on this.
Most important thing here is that we've got to stand up to Chinese imperialism. I mean, that is core to us. They have been taking away our jobs. They have been cheating on trade. Now they're trying to build their military on the backs of the American middle class. This is their plan. You look at what they've done with COVID. They've lied. They turned it into a pandemic with their lies. We've got to stand up to them. They want to take over Taiwan so they can push us out of Asia, shut down our ability to sell our goods and buy stuff freely. They want to shut us out from all of that. It's part of their plan to cheat. We've got to stop that and stand up to them.
There we go. Senator Josh Hawley from the Show Me State. Senator, always a pleasure. Appreciate your time with us today. Thank you so much, and Godspeed.